My name is Zach.
My name is Jack.
My name's Trance.
And today our experiment is testing water filtration.
We're going to be doing two different styles of testing. They're both going to be the same pretty much until the very last part. So our first step, we're going to be using a little cup with a coffee strainer to try and put the water in and infiltrate all of the big particles out of the water. Next, we're going to use a wet towel. Then finally, for our two different ones, first we're going to be using sand. Then the second one, we're going to be using larger charcoal pieces.
And then our hypothesis is that between the sand and the charcoal, the sand is going to be able to filter out those like non-water particles a lot better than the charcoal rocks.
The first part of our experiment, we separated our 200 milliliters of water into two beakers, and then to test our first 100 milliliters, we poked a hole into one of the paper cups and put a coffee filter to catch any larger materials from dropping into the beaker below. It did take a while for the liquid to run through the coffee filter, so we will skip past the boring parts. We then repeated the same process with our other 100 milliliters as we waited for the first trial to run its course. The difference between these two trials will be the ending stage when we use sand for the first trial and then larger charcoal pieces for the second to strain the water. Next, we will take a look at our first trial and run it through a wet washcloth. We decided to wet the washcloth prior to pouring our water through it to make sure that most of the water passed through instead of soaking into the towel itself. We also believe that it would help capture some of the pieces stuck in our dirty water. The last step in our first trial was to recreate the first step, but this time we also added an even coat of sand at the bottom of the coffee filter. We did this to make sure even the smallest particles of debris in the water would be trapped in the sand, leaving a clearer liquid in the end. Now that our second trial of water is ready, we will be pouring it through the same damp washcloth that we used prior. And yes, we did clean it to not have any debris from previous trials. Now you will see a side-by-side of the finished trial number 1 on the left and our trial 2 on the right before we use our charcoal. As previously mentioned, we will move on to our last step of our second trial, which we will be using charcoal instead of sand. We believe that using two different sizes of natural filtration materials will dictate how much debris will be passed through and eventually captured. The first liquid we are showing you is our charcoal trial, or trial number 2. The other is trial number 1, in which we use sand. We noticed that the sand had a lighter color than the charcoal, but the charcoal had far less debris remaining. We believe this to be because from our original 200 milliliters, the charcoal was the lower 100 milliliters, and that's where most of the debris had settled.
To reset our hypothesis, we thought that the sand would filter out the water better than the charcoal.
We noticed in our experiments that it was actually the opposite. The charcoal actually made the water a little bit lighter colored than from previous.
And because of that and the way that the color looked between the two glasses, and because the charcoal did better than sand, we're going to say that this myth is actually busted.